Good evening. It's 7 o'clock. I'd like to call the Talmadge City Council meeting to order. It is Thursday, May 25th. This is our second meeting of the month. Let's move on to item 2. We'll start with our opening prayer and Pledge of Allegiance with Reverend Scott Lowe leading us in the prayer. Thank you, Scott.
All right. If we could bow, please. Oh God, we thank you for all that you give us, all that you are, all that you call us to be. For Lord, you, I believe, want wholeness and goodness in all of us. Lord, we all know somebody in our lives who is hurting, who is suffering from illness or conflict or disease. Lord, we pray for your intervention, that you would bring them healing and peace. Lord, allow us to humble ourselves before you and to each other to remember that we are not the center of the universe, but you call us to look outward, to have humility, to offer grace. Lord, we pray for empathy, that we would see needs of others first. Lord, we pray for compassion, that we would want to come alongside people who are suffering. Lord, when you said that there was a greatest commandment, you called us to love you, God, with all of our being, and you called us to love our neighbors. That it's that simple. Although, God, you watch us and you know that it's not always easy for us to love. And so, God, we ask that you would show us your love, grant us your peace, give us wisdom to listen as you lead, as we lead in this community. Amen.
Thank you very much. Please remain standing. The Mayor will lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Item 3, roll call. Mrs. Burton?
Becky Allman.
Here.
Jonathan Bolus.
Here.
Adam Bozick.
Mr. Bozick will be absent with family function.
Mary Gutman.
Here.
Carol Kilway.
Here.
Dennis Lowry.
Here.
Craig Ciesick.
Mr. Ciesick is absent as well with family function. So we have a quorum tonight. We have 5 members present. Item 4, correcting and adopting the previous meeting minutes of May 11th, 2023.
Mr. Lowry?
Mrs. Kilway,
I move to adopt the meeting minutes of 5/11/2023 as presented.
have a motion?
Second.
Mr. Bolus, second. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none. Mrs. Burton?
Jonathan Bolus.
Yes.
Mary Gutman.
Yes.
Carol Kilway.
Yes.
Dennis Lowry.
Yes.
Becky Allman.
Yes.
Minutes are adopted 5-0. Item 5, financial reports. We have none this evening. Before we move on to the public hearings, we would like to swear in our new full-time firefighter, EMT, and but that requires a motion and a second. Can I have a motion, please?
Mr. Lowry?
Mrs. Kilway?
I move to, at this time, swear in firefighter Jack Snyder as a full-time firefighter.
Thank you. Motion second, please.
Second.
Mrs. Ullman, second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Mrs. Burton?
Mary Gutman.
Yes.
Carol Kilway.
Yes.
Dennis Lowry.
Yes.
Becky Allman.
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion to amend the agenda was adopted 5-0. Mayor Klein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Council, for adding this to the agenda. It's truly my honor and privilege to be able to swear in one of the newest members of the Talmadge Fire Department. So, Jack or Mike or what, come on up. I got to understand what that means. So Is that your middle name, Mike?
Yeah.
Okay. Everyone knows him as Mike, but I know him as Jack. It's truly an honor, like I said, to be able to do this for our department. And so if you're ready to go, let's stand down here. We got to get in the camera. You stand right there. So the public can see you. Turn this way. All right. All right. That's the camera.
That's the camera looking at?
Yeah, okay.
All right.
I
I couldn't see the camera.
All right. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Mike Schneider,
Do solemnly swear to uphold the Constitution of the United States,
do solemnly swear to uphold the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution and statutes of the City of Talmadge,
the Constitution and statutes of the City of Talmadge,
and the State of Ohio,
and the State of Ohio,
the ordinances and resolutions
the ordinances and resolutions
of the City of Talmadge.
of the City of Talmadge.
I will faithfully,
I will faithfully,
honestly,
honestly,
and impartially
and impartially
discharge the duties and responsibilities
discharge the duties and responsibilities
of a full-time firefighter paramedic
of a full-time firefighter paramedic
for the City of Talmadge,
for the City of Talmadge,
beginning Monday, April 17th,
beginning
2023.
beginning Monday, April 17th, 2023.
Congratulations, welcome aboard.
Congratulations. Thank you. Mike comes to us from Chardon area. He's earned the nickname Jack Mike so far. Remains to be seen where that goes. So he's been here for a few weeks now. Mike is a good-spirited guy. He's working out well, so look forward to many more years. Mike.
You want to say anything?
Thank you guys for bringing me on.
You're welcome. Thank council.
Thank you guys.
You done, Mayor?
Yeah.
You guys feel free to stay, or we'll give you a minute to exit, and obviously, feel free to get some pictures. Congratulations again.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, at this time, we'll move to item 6 and turn the meeting over for public hearings to Mrs. Kilway.
Thank you. It is now 7:07 PM, and I'm going to open the public hearing for ordinance 2023-51, amended with Exhibit A and the tract Exhibit A. It is amending and supplementing Section 1108.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Kilway, can you double check if your mic's on?
It is on.
It is? Okay, I'm sorry. We're having a hard time hearing over here. It might just be the ambient noise.
Okay, sorry. I'll move it closer. So ordinance 2023-51 is amending and supplementing sections 1108, signs and appendix A3, sign-specific definitions of the Talmadge codified ordinances. And as I said, we are opening the public hearing at this time. Is there anyone in the public that has anything that they would like to say in favor of ordinance 2023-51? Please come to the podium and state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Keith Goodwin with Keith Heating and Cooling, 35 Northwest Avenue, Talmadge, Ohio.
Thank you.
I haven't been in front of council since the early 90s when I was president of the Chamber of Commerce for a couple terms. I want to thank Councilperson Carol Kilway. I called Carol as a local business owner when I saw the legislation, and I read it. I had some concerns. We spent over 2 hours at Wally Waffles the other day dissecting this thing, tearing it apart and looking at it. I am in favor of this legislation. I think it's good for the city. I think it's good for the community. I think it's fair to businesses. There were some typos, a couple concerns. The one thing I would like to see differently in this ordinance is the portable marquee signs. You know, the ones that you can put your name on, they have the arrow that goes over, and sometimes they light and flash and point. I think it would be fair if you let businesses use those for a period of no more than 10 days, once every 2 years. I think they should be prohibited from being in the Devil Strip. I think it has another name, but we call it Devil Strip here. And I think the flashing lights should be eliminated. We're coming up on our 50-year anniversary of being in business, and I'd like to have one of those signs out when the day arrives. So I think limited use for those, not abuse, would probably be acceptable. If you don't, I understand, but I think it's a good idea, and I would ask council to consider that. That's about all I have to say, unless there's any questions. I just want to thank Councilperson Kilway for spending the time with me and listening to my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate that. Is there anyone else that has anything to say at this time in favor of? Okay. Is there anyone that has anything to say against ordinance 2023-51? Second time, does anyone have anything to say in favor of ordinance 2023-51? And second time, does anyone have anything to say against ordinance 2023-51? And third and final time, is there any additional comments for ordinance 2023-51, either for or against? Hearing none, I'm going to close the committee. And I'm going to open the planning and zoning at this time for
7:11.
discussion. Close the public hearing at 7:11. Thank you, Mayor Klein. And now I'm going to open planning and zoning to have some quick discussion on this to council. Okay.
Mrs. Kilway?
Yes, Mr. Lowry.
I would just say that, well, number one, it was nice of Mr. Goodwin to come in.
Yes.
And number two, other than that piece of communication from a business owner, I've not heard from any other business owners.
Correct. At this time, I have not heard of it from any other business owner either. And it was nice that he reached out to me because he has a vested interest in this because he does have a business here. And we did have an extensive conversation, and we did go through this very thoroughly. And then I had a meeting with Mrs. Hussing and went through a lot of items. Just to kind of bring everyone up to date with some of the discussions that we had, the one thing that we do have to remember is that this revision for this section, the purposes are to improve the overall regulations, to make them a more business-friendly ordinance, but at the same time, we want to still maintain the purpose and intent of the city. So we do have to be careful on how we read this and try not to read too much into it. The marquee signs that he had asked about, I just kind of want to bring that up for discussion at this point in time. I don't think we've ever been allowed to have these portable marquee signs in the city. Is that correct?
It's been prohibited as part of the code for as long as I've been here, which is almost 20 years.
Right.
And before that, from the time that, the code predates that, so.
Okay. Is there a reason why it's prohibited? Is it just that?
I think the concern with that is just the clutter. So when people have invested in monument signs, signs out in their property, I think that the concern is that when you have a portable marquee sign, which is far more significant than like a temporary sign might be, that we would allow that's made of cardboard or plastic, like a typical yard sign, that it distracts and it could potentially clutter the area. So I think that, I imagine that is, it's one of the intents and purposes of the code, and I'm imagining that was the basis for that prohibition.
Okay. All right. Does anyone on council have any opinions on this at this time?
I had a clarification question.
Yes.
So when I heard the description of a marquee sign, that what I heard should be limited to 10 days or less. Would an example of that be like a sign encouraging smoking in the Brimfield Jed District that's on the curb there as you're pulling into Panera? Would that be an example of a marquee sign?
If you go to.
Sorry, I'm not familiar with that sign.
Yeah.
It's like one of those ribbon.
have it
It's a yellow.
We have a sample of it in our code. If you give us a minute, we can pull it
Flashing.
up.
Okay.
Jonathan, you could look right here, too.
So it has to have, okay, so it's electronic based is what we're referring to here.
Not
Well,
necessarily.
what we're doing with the amendment that's in front of you is just adding that type, a marquee sign with an electronic message center is being added to the list of prohibited signs.
Right.
Where before it was always included, the marquee signs were prohibited, and this is also prohibiting an electronic version of it. And honestly, we can make an argument that as the prohibition stands now, they already are prohibited, but we just wanted to be extra clear with that because we wanted to make sure we have consistency with calling out the electronic signs as
And
well.
thank you. And then the comment on temporary usage was for like anniversary celebrations or milestones of a business, for example, which is currently not in the code.
So there are temporary signs that are permitted in the code, and they have to be made of certain material, which is temporary. So it's really, the definitions base that on what the nature, material, and format of the sign structure itself is. So you are allowed to have temporary signs, and one of the big differences is the temporary signs, we don't permit, so we don't have people having to come in and pay and monitor that through the zoning department. Whereas if we developed a period of time in which a marquee sign, for example, would be permitted, then it would be something that would have to go through the zoning department, and they would have to follow that in order to make that make sense. So,
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, under the current code and with this new code, if Mr. Goodwin would want to put a banner up on his front porch between the two pillars, happy celebrating our 50th anniversary, come in and welcome us, that's permitted. This is just if you recall, the yellow portable that you drove a vehicle up and behind the vehicle and you change the changeable numbers, letters and that.
Okay.
Is what is currently prohibited, and we're just adding, like Megan said, just the electronic portion of that.
Okay. Thank you.
Mrs. Kilway.
Yes, Mrs. Gutman?
I don't remember reading, for the temporary signs, is there a limit to the size that they could be?
yes. It's in the tables.
Okay, because I can appreciate that the marquee signs attract extra attention and the business owner might want that attention that brings in business, whereas a banner hanging on their business doesn't get that, grab your attention from the street, and maybe a temporary sign, if it's significantly smaller, wouldn't necessarily have that attention-grabbing effect. So I can see how a business owner would have an advantage or would maybe generate more business from having that bigger sign. And maybe I can see that maybe once every 2 years is something that we might give them that advantage. But could we accomplish that by letting them have bigger temporary signs? I don't know. I'm torn because I can see how they clutter things up, and then you're creating more work for the city too, which is at a cost for taxpayers. So all that to say, I can see the advantages and disadvantages right now.
Okay. Anyone else have any comments on this at this time?
So a temporary banner can be 32 square feet, and the freestanding large temporary banner have a maximum area of 16 square feet. So, and then it's dependent also on the size and location, so that's all in the chart.
Mrs. Kilway,
Yes.
can I ask a question, Mrs. Raber?
Yes.
Mrs. Raber, while you have that, how long can you have a temporary sign?
Well, the duration is that it has to be temporary. It's in the definition for temporary signs, and the material is of a temporary nature, so it's something like plastic or cardboard or something that's going to deteriorate over time. But the
So you-
duration
so-
is, this is again, a more business-friendly change, so it is allowing for people to have temporary signs for a longer duration than what they had been previously.
But right now, you don't know how long that is?
It is defined as temporary. So, yeah, it's
you
not,
can-
it's
you
not a
can-
definite term.
So you
It's
put
not a
that-
definitive
Yeah, so you can
timeframe,
put that sign out until that material decomposes.
essentially.
Well, that's a pretty long time. Thanks.
Especially plastic.
That's business friendly.
Or until it looks tattered or torn, that's what.
Thank you.
It'll probably be tattered and torn before it decomposes if it's plastic.
There'll be a new anniversary.
I'm just looking through the temporary signs to see if it does specify in here. It doesn't specify a time.
It does in the definitions.
In the definitions.
Yeah, it's the definition of the temporary sign. And it's as it relates to the material.
Sorry, just give me a second here, please. 6. 8 temporary signs.
It's in the appendix and it says which is intended to be displayed for a limited period of time.
So just a limited period of time?
Well, there's a whole precursor to that. I can read the whole definition if you
Why am I
want.
not pulling up the right one?
A banner, pennant, poster, display, or illustration which is affixed to or painted upon or represented directly or indirectly upon a building, structure, or piece of land, and which directs attention to an object, product, place, person, institution, organization, or business, and is constructed of cloth, canvas, plastic, sheet, cardboard, or other like material which is intended to be displayed for a limited period of time.
Okay, so there's no specification of
Correct.
3 months, 6 months, anything? Limited
Correct.
time, okay,
Yes.
okay. Okay,
So
yes.
I understand what we're trying to do. But, it's hard. It's hard for us to enforce things anyway. And so now, we could at times be at odds with a business owner over the condition of a sign and what we think is okay and what they may think is okay in terms of appearance and condition. And there's no time limit as to what is temporary.
Well, there's always been that, we would have to prove that no matter what that was, if we were saying that any sign fell outside of the building code or maintenance standards, we run into that same issue, and we have to be able to place a reasonable person test on it and be able to show that and demonstrate that. So typically, the ones that we would act on would be ones that are complaint-based, and then it's a reasonableness standard. And so if the law department, for example, felt that wouldn't be a prosecutable case, we're not gonna take that to court if we got into a situation like that. But again, typically what we're doing is we're working with people and we're trying to find solutions. The benefit to this is that, as you have indicated, it's very challenging to keep up with every temporary sign that a business would put up. And typically, and it's also cost prohibitive for them to come in and have us keep track of, okay, you have this sign for this long, and then you're gonna take it down, and then you're gonna put up another one or whatever. So this is gonna be more about the size and the type and the number than it is about the duration, to be honest. And the duration becomes an issue more if it becomes something that is clearly deteriorated and just looks badly, but.
Well, and this definitely makes us much more user-friendly, especially for a new business in a new location, because you can use a temporary sign before you invest in the permanent signs for a long period of time, actually.
And a lot of people end up with, needing to have that time frame to have something put in and figure out what they want and then get it installed or whatever. But again, the intent is not to replace those, you know, the requirements for the monument signs and things like that. So if it's a sign that is, you know, a representative sign for your business, a permanent sign, then you still have to meet those code requirements. So this is really what we're talking about is, again, the plastic, the banners, the yard sign type looking things.
Yeah, so, and I know we've gotten on this discussion with temporary signs, but that's kind of gotten a little bit off the mark with the portable marquee signs. I know they are considered temporary in nature, but it is a, you know, solidly constructed, you know, item. And I just think it would just give businesses another tool in their toolbox for special occasions and special circumstances in order to promote their business. And if we were to limit the duration and limit how many times they can, you know, pull, and make them pull a permit for it, you know, that, yes, you can have this, you have to have a permit for it, you know, and you could have it for 2 weeks' time. I just think, you know, if we want to be business friendly, I just think that would be another tool in their toolbox to add. But I'm one person here, and we're a council, so I would just like to, then my next thing would be is, could we make a motion to make an amendment for something like this? And then have council vote on it to add it into it?
Well, I would say that if you want to amend that you need to see what the actual language looks like.
Right.
I mean, you're not going to be able to formally amend it tonight based on that. You can
Okay.
take a poll vote as to whether or not people are interested in seeing an amendment along those lines. And then what I would recommend is that you come back next meeting and you would have an amendment in front of you, it would go back to second, and then you would not be able to take action until the end of June.
Right. And just to let you know, too, I wasn't really going to ask for adoption of this today, because I think there's a lot of things in here we need to make sure that we get it right, because I don't want to in 6 months come back and saying, oh, we overlooked something. I want to make sure we get this right. Because every time I read this, I keep thinking of something else.
Well, there is always something else, and so
Right.
again, with any code, there's always something.
And I know it is
So-
fluid. I know. Okay, so can I just, Mr. Bullish, you had a question first.
Yes, just so I'm 100% understanding, going back to the enforcement of temporary signs, when you're driving down East Avenue and you get into Brimfield, this is not enforceable. There's a whole different process. So
We
if a-
do not enforce Brimfield. We have nothing to do with Brimfield zoning. The JED,
Okay.
the JED is only an income tax sharing and not zone.
There-
Like, we do not control, we don't have jurisdiction over their zoning nor their signs or anything that has to do with how they build, the design, build, or anything like that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else real quick on the marquee signs before I take a little straw poll? Okay, so I'll just go down and ask individually if anyone is interested in going further with potentially allowing these marquee signs on a very, very limited basis. Like we stated, 10 consecutive days, only every 2 years. I'm going to say myself, yes, I would allow a business to do that. Mrs. Gutman?
I think, yes, it's business friendly, and I think persuasive argument.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bolus?
At that duration, I would agree.
Okay. Mrs. Allman?
I do feel that we need more discussion on this.
Yes.
And if we're only going to allow it every 2 years and for so many days, who's going to keep track of all that? Like, as far as who's going to keep track of how many days it's out? And, you know, are they going to wait the full 2 years to do it again? That's my question.
And that's why we're having the discussion to see if we're going to go further with this.
And that
as
would
well.
be definitely a discussion
Right.
through the zoning department,
Right.
how to track this new software that we're looking at. I don't know if that can, it might be able to track it a little better. That's not in front of council yet, but it was in the budget.
Okay. Mr. Lowry?
Well, in principle, I agree with it. I like anything that helps a business owner promote his business, as long as it doesn't hurt other businesses or other people in the right of way. I'm not sure if I agree with the parameters as they're set. I think the location of the sign in relationship to the structure, the main building needs to be looked at. So for instance, Mr. Goodwin is on Northwest Avenue, maybe 20 feet from the sidewalk. If someone's leasing space at Midway Plaza, or they're leasing space in Talmadge Plaza or South, Plaza up on South Avenue, where do those go? So in premise, I agree. I just think we need to discuss it more.
Okay. All right, so we will have some more discussion. I'll get with the law department on this item, and we'll go from there on this item. Okay. Like I said, I made a lot of notes on this. Okay, another question that was brought up under sign materials. So this is 110805, general regulations. Item B is sign materials. Every sign shall be constructed of durable materials using non-corrosive fasteners and installed as to be compatible in character with regard to materials, color, and size to signs designated or located on the same building and on adjoining buildings in order to equate the attention that they're meant to attract and to produce an overall unified effect in accordance with the standards as set forth in this code. And the question that was brought up is how do you enforce logos, because they might not be compatible in character. But with my discussion with Mrs. Hussing, she did specify that logos are not regulated. It's just the construction, the materials around it, just to make the building look more cohesive. And I want to thank you very much for that explanation, because, I was just envisioning as I'm reading this through, you're going to have a building, and you're going to have all the same fonts. How are people going to be able to, advertise their brand without using their logo? So thank you very much for coming forward with that. We did have a discussion on the 0.3 foot candles and stating that they were very dim. And yes, they are dim, but in the description of the illumination, it is a 0.3 foot candle at a measurement of 50 feet away. So you're going to have your sign, and then 50 feet away is where you start your measurement, and that's where the 0.3 foot candles is. And so that's where we really do want to have that dim, because you don't want it to project too far out on that. And then going a little further down, and this is in the same section, which is, I just want to make sure I get this all right for you guys. 110805, still the general regulations, and it is under the F sign illumination. That's where the foot candle discussion is. And then below that, number F, it states, signs are only partially illuminated shall meet all electrical requirements for the portion directly illuminated. All electrical wiring shall be in conduit and not exposed to the elements or external stress in any way. All electrical signs shall have a disconnecting switch located in a readily accessible place. Now, this is something that I did not know, because I'm not, an electrician. But item A above says all signs must meet the standards as specified in the National Electric Code. Well, F is in the National Electric Code, so that section appears to be a little redundant because it's already part of the National Electric Code. So do we need to state that twice?
What section are you in?
110805. And it is literally the very, very last, it's under illumination.
We'll look at it for you.
Okay,
Mrs. Kilway,
yes.
to get back to what the previous discussion we had on the temporary marquee sign, that's not actually what they're called, but if they're electrified, then we need to have that discussion as well, because those normally are just plugged in with an extension cord.
Right.
Someone's not going to run conduit to get to that sign. So we may need to have the discussion on whether or not, those cannot be lit. If we allow them, they're not going to be able to be lit, So just throw that out there.
Okay.
Some of them are just battery back powered.
Yeah, that would
or
be, yeah.
solar
They have to be
powered,
self-contained.
Self-contained,
Yeah.
but then you don't want the noise running as a generator next to another business.
Correct.
Okay. The next item that was brought to my attention is in section 110806. If there's a three-story building in our city, you cannot put a sign on the top floor, and that was a concern. If you're gonna put up a three-story building and it's gonna be like the PNC building or something like that, they can't put PNC on the top. But Mrs. Hussing did explain that we would then go through planning and zoning, and you would ask for a variance in order to get something like that on it. But and at that time, we would determine if we want a sign big on top of a 3 or 4-story building. So there is variances and ways around that as well. And then there were just a couple wording that needed to be changed, and I got with Mrs. Hussing on those about double words in certain places and adding the word signs next to awnings. And another area that I think we need to have a little bit more clarification on is in (110807), which has been merged into 110808 for temporary signs. And we go down to B, permitting. And this is, I guess, would be for legal department. It says, no sign permit is required for temporary signs located on private property that comply with the standards of this section. Do we need to add business or residential to the private property? There's just the description that it would apply to both business private property and residential private property?
We can take a look at it. I don't know. I'm not
Okay.
looking at it right now.
Okay, then I think the only other thing that I might have a question on, in the same section, under restriction and placement, we all know that we cannot put any signs in the city, in the public right-of-way, and that only city-permitted signs are allowed to go in there. There's a couple instances where I noticed, like, there's signs in the middle of the circle, and I don't know if, they've gotten permission from the city or not. Like, when the library has a sale, they have signs in the circle. Do they get permission from the city to put them up?
Yes, they do.
They do? Okay. And is there like a formal process that they have to go through, or is it they just call up and say, hey, we're having a sale, can I put my signs up?
That's correct.
Okay, and that's fine, as long as,
Just like the chamber doing the pancakes.
right,
It's a public awareness message
okay,
for a public purpose.
okay. Hang on a second.
Mrs. Kilway?
Yes,
Could I ask Mr. Raber a question, please?
yes,
So, Mrs. Kilway brought up grammatical spelling errors or typos. As a council, we don't need to deal with those, right? You have the
Nope.
discretion to always correct those things.
Correct.
Thank you.
And even specifically in this code, generally it's everything, but even in this code, when we adopted it, all those are at the discretion. We just can make those corrections if we find them.
okay.
Just didn't want you to think you had to cross all the Ts and dot all the Is, Mrs. Kilway.
You know what, that's what I like to do. I'm sorry. And then the only other question, which I thought was a great question, because I didn't know the answer, and I found the answer out. Signs in residential and residential overlay districts. Where are our residential overlay districts? We don't have those mapped out yet, correct?
That's correct, but
Okay.
they're hopefully eventually coming.
They're eventually coming. Okay, so residential overlay districts. And just as a description, they're basically an area where there's businesses and residentials together, and we're allowing both.
Mixed use.
Both
Yeah, there's
uses?
neighborhood development, or I think it's called neighborhood development overlay, and that is a mixed use type.
Mixed use. Okay, that's great. That is great, and I believe that is all that I really had on this at this time. Anyone else have anything with this ordinance?
So at this time, are we expecting just to seek these clarifications and then keep this at the third reading?
I would like to keep this at third reading, and I can sit down and talk with legal and zoning and maybe come up with some wording for the temporary marquee uses, and then we will bring that back to council as an amendment. Is that correct?
That is correct. Then
Okay.
council then can look at what the amendment is and decide to accept the amendment or not accept the amendment.
Correct.
Or amend it again.
Right,
And then I'll take it back to second reading, which this could be adopted at second reading,
okay.
but
Without
not
another
go into
pub-
effect for 30 days.
No, it has to go to three readings, right? Okay.
3 readings,
Okay.
end of July.
End of July, okay.
With another
I'll be
hearing?
around.
With another public hearing?
No.
No.
Oh.
Public hearing's done.
Okay.
And then anything that comes after the public hearing, you've had the public hearing, so you can make the changes and people are on notice
Right.
moving
They had their
forward.
chance, right?
And they can, come in again.
Right.
They can come in next week.
Okay. Okay, so, I think we've talked this one to death right now. Is that correct? Does anyone else have anything else to add to ordinance 23-51? No? Okay, so I will close planning and zoning,
No, you still got,
but then I have to open a public hearing, right? Yes. Okay. So now it is 7:42 PM, and I will open the public hearing for ordinance 2023-52. It is imposing a 6-month moratorium on acceptance of any zoning application for a car wash and providing for immediate enactment. Is there anyone here to talk in favor of ordinance 2023-52? Is there anyone here that has anything to say against ordinance 2023-52? Second time, is there anyone here to speak in favor of ordinance 2023-52? Second time, is there anyone to speak against ordinance 2023-52? And third and final time, is there anyone here to speak either in favor of or against ordinance 2023-52? Hearing nothing, it is 7:43, and I'll close the public hearing. And I will open planning and zoning again, and we will have any discussion we need to have on this.
Mrs. Kilway?
Yes.
Mrs. Hussing's in the audience.
Yes.
And I do have a couple questions of her, if I could ask them.
Sure.
you can go either or.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you. So, in general, so you'll understand where my questions are coming from. In general, I believe in letting the free market system work. So, we have about 10 banks in the city. If one of those banks isn't making money, they will close, and then the market determines that. We probably have 20 insurance companies, probably, my goodness gracious, 7 or 8 different real estate brokerages, probably over 100 realtors. So there's a lot of different types of companies that we're saying it's okay for the market to determine whether they're successful or not, and the business owner takes the risk. And most of these, the bigger they are and the more corporate they are, the more studies they have done, and before they invest a significant amount of money, especially the amount of money that it would cost to build a new car wash, they're pretty certain that there's a need for that entity and that they're going to be successful and make a profit. That being said, you and I had a conversation, and you said that you feel that you support the moratorium because you think that we're too broad on where they can go, and if I understood you correct, that the space that would be used for a car wash could be used for other types of businesses right now, and you would like to see where they could go in a smaller footprint in our city. Is that fair?
It is fair. I think the concern is that currently they're permitted conditionally in our general commercial C3 districts. And I think it's smart of our city to impose a moratorium so that we can revisit that and revisit the general regulations of the car wash in a C3 if we are going to continue to permit it in that C3 property. So there, if you look at the zoning map, that you can see all the locations where that C3 is located. And I think you'll see that maybe those locations aren't as good of a placement for a car wash, where we probably would prefer to see more of a general commercial use. So
here's where I was thinking, Mrs. Hussing. So I get in line to go through the car wash, and I'm probably there maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes, which is actually shorter, and there's less cars at the car wash line than there is when I go to McDonald's or Dunkin' Donuts. What makes car washes unique?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
or-
sir.
I know it's a question to her, but the reason I'm also in favor of this moratorium, so in a C3 district, which is right abutting residential property, if you go out to the brand-new one out at the Cascades, I was in the parking lot at Menards, I couldn't even hear my wife talk because the noise that is omitted from the tunnels of these things could be pointing directly to a residential house. So we got to make sure that we can understand the noise factor that's coming out of this, and that we either have to turn them, or we just have to understand that West Avenue, we had so many complaints of the noise that's coming out of that brand-new facility down there on West Avenue of the apartments right across the street.
Right.
And so we had to tweak and modify, and I think that's really what the moratorium's for. Not so much as we welcome new businesses coming into town, but as an economic development driving tool, I'd rather have another McDonald's than another car wash.
And if I can expand on the noise too, like he mentioned, so we just recently approved that new car wash on West Avenue. And yes, we've received a lot of noise complaints, and it isn't, at first they were just music playing, but the tunnel itself makes so much noise. The vacuum, the drying machines, they make so much noise that it is a nuisance to the residential neighborhood around. So again, it's the placement of it, the regulations that we're going to impose. That's pretty much where that lies.
Those are great points, great answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Hussing. Mr. Bolus?
Yes, just a question for the floor, I guess. Is this assuming that planning and zoning would pass an application for a car wash today? Or could they reject it?
Someone could apply prior to this ordinance going into effect to go through the process.
Right, but there could still be a decision to reject in planning and zoning, correct?
Theoretically, but based on the criteria.
Based on the criteria, they'd go through it, including noise, lighting, aesthetics, et cetera, and determine it's not feasible or suitable for that location. They could, theoretically.
Yes, but, again, it gets more challenging when you have,
Because if they're considering the
you
criteria,
have situations where we have passed other car washes in similar circumstances, so it's important to reevaluate what those criteria need to be, and if those criteria need to be the same, or if they need to be perhaps more strict.
so should there be a whereas clause or edit made to this document to include if that were to pass? Like as a result of that passing, that still would not go through? Until it would be, like if they passed it, it would still require the 6 months?
No. This is to put a pause on it. So
Right.
if this is passed by council, then they cannot go through that process for the 6-month period of time. That's what you're voting on.
So we're assuming that all applications for car washes will pass.
Okay, I'm getting a little bit confused.
I'm just asking.
Because the question that you first asked, I thought
Yeah.
was, right now, at this moment in time, before you
Correct.
pass this legislation.
Yes.
Then they would have to go through a conditional zoning process, and they would have to be judged based on that criteria. But again, it's a little bit more, it's more problematic for them to look at those applications and judge them differently if they have done so with other similarly situated car washes. So what this moratorium does is once, or if you decide to adopt that this evening, then we will not accept applications for 6 months, and there will be no processing of any car wash applications for 6 months while we continue to explore what the city wants to do.
Okay, so the restriction would be per council, not per planning and zoning.
Correct.
Restriction, yeah, council would be saying through this ordinance, no applications will be taken for 6 months.
Okay, and then my follow-up question to that is, to Mr. Lowry's point, my only concern with this was where does it stop? So, like, to the point of the businesses, right? You know, we look at Chambers and just the demographics in the city. You know, is it today it's a car wash, tomorrow it's oil change, tomorrow it's a Mexican restaurant? You know, I'm just thinking through this, you know, at 30,000 feet.
So it does have to be a facially neutral type, and so this is a type of use that is in our code and is spelled out in our code. So it has to be a type of use. You can't pick, like, restaurants, you'd have to pick all the restaurants. You can't pick a type of restaurant, for example, things like that. And if you, you may have noticed that there's been quite a few other municipalities in the area who have been adopting moratoriums as well. I think in general, because these are causing more and more concerns, more and more complaints, and people are wanting to further evaluate this. So we would not be alone if you decided to adopt this moratorium.
And if I could just add too to that, these car washes that have been built recently, these are state-of-the-art, brand-new, I mean, high-tech car washes that 20 years ago, we didn't see, you know, this type of a car wash come through. So they are a lot noisier, and it does bring additional aspects that we need to consider. So all this does is put a pause on car washes for right now. It's not saying we don't want any more. It's putting a pause on it so that we can determine what the criteria as to where, you know, where they would be located, and if there's any additional restrictions we would have to put on them because of the additional noise and so forth. Okay. Anything else? Any other questions from council? Okay, that we are at third reading on this.
Mrs. Kilway?
Yes.
I would move to adopt the moratorium, ordinance 2023-52.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 2023-52. Any further discussion?
I just want to thank both the mayor and Mrs. Hussing for answering my questions. I was not aware, of the reason why this was being asked for, that noise was an issue that was impacting residents. And I wasn't really aware of C3 abutting residential. So I'm in favor of this. We don't want to negatively impact a resident's a piece of,
Right.
So anyway, I support this.
Great, thank you. So we do have a motion and a second. Any further discussion at all? Nope. Mrs. Burton, please call the roll.
Mary Gutman,
Yes.
Carol Kilway.
Yes.
Dennis Lowry.
Yes.
Becky Allman.
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus.
Yes.
Ordinance 2023-52 has been adopted by a vote of 5-0. Anything else to come in front of planning and zoning at this time? All right, closed committee, again.
Earned your
Sorry.
money tonight,
I
Mrs.
did.
Kilway. Good job. Item 7, community input. This is the point in our agenda where if anybody in the audience would like to address council, they can for up to 2 minutes. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to do that? Seeing none, we will move on to agenda additions. Item 8, we have none. Reports of administrative officers. We'll start with the mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to be brief. The Talmadge girls softball won again at the regional level. They play tomorrow night at 5 p.m. in New Regal, Ohio, for the regional championship against Mommy. So anyone wishing to travel 2 hours to 2.5 hours, to hats off.
2 hours and 4 minutes.
Well, that was you driving. But all in all, congratulations to the girls and good luck to them. And I know Mr. Bozick's daughter's in the track or some field.
Regional track.
Regional track, so good luck to her. The last day of school is tomorrow for the Talmadge School District. That's hard to believe. The season went extremely fast for me, but I'm sure not as fast for the kids. But hats off to all the graduating kindergartens, 5th grades, the 6th grades, and all those moving up to different buildings. Keep in mind that this coming Monday is Memorial Day Parade. Steps off from Mac Burleson Field at 10 a.m. down West Avenue around the circle back to the cemetery where there will be a ceremony going on there. And also, if you're inclined to run in the 5K run, that's on Northwest Avenue. Oh, Mr. Goodwin's already gone. I made sure that Mr. Ritchie made sure he talked to Keith to make sure that he's aware of it. So that is also Monday morning. And then the Talmadge Chamber Pancake Breakfast is 8 o'clock to 11 o'clock at the community center. Trash recycling service is running a day behind next week. For those residents who are watching, make sure you're aware of that. Also, exciting news that the IT department's been working with the zoning department about updates and making more transparency on our website for improving the navigation for wards, so you can actually go on to look at the ward precinct map, click on it, type your address on it, and it'll pop up what ward you're in, and it's very interactive, so that portion's working very well. Then the zoning map, also, you could go to the department tab, under the zoning department tab, and look under zoning and also do the same thing. What zone am I in? Am I in ward, well, am I in C3, C4, commercial, and whatever? But so they've done a great job, so hats off to Elaine and Justin, who's probably watching. Also, the update on the fire department. Let me just pop this up real quick, and I'll go to some of the new camera systems are up and running, but you could see this is a live photo of the old station, and the new parking lot has been installed. The curbing for it and the asphalt will come next week, And so that is really moving along very well. The landscapers were out there today completing the underground irrigation system around the new building, and then the new grass will be planted and try to wrap that up. So that's moving along. Still working on the garage doors. Seems like we're do 2 steps forward and 1 step backward. So hopefully we have some good news by our next council meeting, the status of that. Also tonight you have ordinance 2023-53. That's the fiber. I'm asking for amendment, and we'll have conversation on that amendment. That is the fiber that the county is going to install, starting on Thomas Road through the industrial park, all the way up to the Joint Dispatch Center, adding additional pipe for us. There's an added cost to and we'll talk about that when it comes up. I think that's all I have. Service Director Rohr, happy to announce his daughter was married last weekend. He's out of state and celebrating with his family. And then Dr. Cooper's at a training tonight. And you do have a report that was sent to the council this week going over the Don's report about the police. The traffic initiative that is, they're out patrolling and definitely doing a lot of work. I hear them on Howell Road a lot, so if you're on Howell Road by the Freedom Trail, they're pulling you over and try to abide by the speed. End of report.
Thank you. Anything for the mayor? Thanks, Mayor. Then we're going to jump all the way down to Director of Finance.
Thank you. I have no report this evening.
Thank you, Director of Law, Mrs. Raber.
Thank you. I have no report this evening.
Ooh, you guys are making up time. We're going to move to the item 10, reports to standing committees. We'll go back to Mrs. Kilway.
Okay, once again, I will open planning and zoning. Is there anything to come in front of planning and zoning committee? Hearing none, close. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, not close, Mr. Bolus.
So, thank you. I received some inquiries. This is specific to land usage, specifically around the proposed stops for Metro busing. And specifically, this does pertain to signage as well. Obviously, residents are starting to see the signs go in. The question I've been getting is around, are the stops specifically finalized and the timeline around that? And is that considered, like, for example, this one over here by the school's property, like, is the traffic study a part of that where that specific stop is placed? So the inquiries I'm receiving are specific to the stop locations and the proposed traffic congestion.
So the I did have a meeting with Metro this week. Actually, it was on Tuesday. The stop locations are by their strategic plan, how they go, the distance in between stops. It is not done by their traffic study or by the city of Talmadge. They just have the right, they put it up in the public right-of-way. It is a public transportation. The bus stops will be evaluated. The bus goes into play on June 1st, and they will evaluate the need for those stops and then modify the stops shortly thereafter with input. And we will make sure that we have input this time. If there's nobody standing at that location, that bus will not stop there. And it will just continue on.
Right, but so right now where those posts are staked or the signs are posted, that can be assumed to be a permanent stop unless the administration feels it needs to be removed.
Or in combination with the Metro Transit and the city, we could request them. Well, we have to let it get into play and evaluate it, and then we will be able to make a better educated guess, especially the one at the school. There might be opportunities for grandparents and kids to be able to go there for the football games or to the baseball games or to that, that school complex is multi-use.
Right, and the question again was around specifically like the stops and the time of day as well, like the routing to not interfere with school busing, and as well as parent drop-off.
I told them in my meeting this week, that East Avenue corridor during school, when it starts and when it ends, is horrendous. And your timing of your bus stops will be way off because
Right.
of the buses. I mean, they're going to be in line just like, they've been running for a week now, so I don't know if you've noticed them on East Avenue. But they're not picking anybody up, they're just doing the bus says training on it, so they're training the route right now.
And do they ask permission to place those, or is it more
No.
of just that's above our, Talmadge has no authority to have a say in that?
They did not ask for those locations to be placed, it's in the public right of way.
Okay. And again, the inquiries I was getting is very specific to the
We got 'em
stops, the stops and the congestion in the time of day. It wasn't busing overall.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else for planning and zoning? Okay, closed committee.
Thank you. Finance, Mr. Bolus.
Yes, I call Finance Committee to order. Tonight, we have an ordinance, a second reading, ordinance 2023-55, authorizing the appropriation of funds for wireless access points and providing for immediate enactment. So again, this is at second reading. Do we have any input from the administration or council on this ordinance?
Just to remind council that this is to reappropriate funds that we had set aside in 2021. However, we were not able to complete the purchase due to supply and chain issues. So what we've done is we've let that money lapse from last year's budget, and we're just asking you to now appropriate those funds in the 2023 budget. Or I'm sorry, in 2022-23. I got off a couple years.
And we received an email from Justin also asking for adoption of this. This was specific to various hardware for one use at public Wi-Fi at MACA as one use and others, but it was the supply chain issue with the hardware being ordered. This could expedite that.
Mr. Willis?
Yes.
I move to adopt ordinance 2023-55 at second reading.
All right, I have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 2023-55 at second reading. Any other discussion? Clerk, please call a roll.
Carol Kilway.
Yes.
Dennis Lowry.
Yes.
Becky Allman.
Yes.
Jonathan Bolus.
Yes.
Mary Gutman.
Yes.
Thank you.
We have ordinance 2023-55 passed by vote of 5-0. At this time, any additional items to bring before the Finance Committee this evening? I had just had one question for an update, or is there any update on the sidewalk project that was proposed as part of the ARPA funding, how that was progressing? I know that was being bid out.
It has been bid and awarded, so we are in the beginning stages of finalizing some things. We did discover a little bit of engineering had to be done closer down towards the roundabout due to some grading on some of those properties, but we are progressing with that. I don't know the exact date that they will begin construction, but I can follow up with Mr. Rohrer when he returns back. But it has been bid and awarded, and we're progressing towards that.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments for council for Finance Committee? All right, I close committee.
Thank you. You're on a roll. You do personnel.
We will go into personnel, open up personnel committee. Mr. Bozick is absent. We have no additional items or ordinances this evening. Anything to come before personnel committee? We did receive an update from Dr. Cooper regarding the police chief hiring process, so please review that. And we haven't received we did receive another update, I'm sorry, on the compensation study as well and when to anticipate that. So again, please just review that update we received from Mr. Cooper. Any other questions or updates for personnel? All right, I close committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowles. Community issues, Mrs. Gutman.
Thank you, Mr. Lowry. I'll open community issues, and we have nothing before us tonight. Does anyone else have anything for community issues? I have one. Mr. Bowles.
Yes, thank you. So I've been contacted by several residents specifically regarding the MACA pool passes selling out this season, specifically to tax-paying residents who may have just missed the deadline because life is busy these days and school's ending, and they're finally realizing they need a pool pass. And then they make a call or stop down to the rack and they can't get one. So I guess my question just for us to all ponder is how can we resolve this? How can we solution for this thinking forward? Again, you can't predict the demand per se, but I know you can look at various trends. I would propose maybe looking at it like a percentage base. So I know we were looking at various, density and population, but maybe look at it instead of looking at it as pass sold, look at it in terms of like, hey, we want to sell X number of passes as a goal, and then we evaluate a ratio within that as a percentage of we're targeting X percent for resident, X percent for non-resident, versus just a specific date and time to say, hey, by, whatever, mid-May, there's the cutoff, because I just don't agree that a tax-paying resident should be closed out of access to passes and then have to resort to day passes and then be excluded from going to the pool on Tuesdays when they're already supporting all operations of that pool in their city taxes. So again, I respect the process. Just wanted to bring it up as a community issue that I've been contacted by several residents in the last week. Again, I think it's because school's getting out and everyone is realizing that they didn't get their pass this year, again, because life is very busy with children and families. So just wanted to bring that up to council and the administration that maybe we can look at it from a couple different angles to try to make sure that doesn't happen. And in the short term, maybe look at, some consideration for those that did miss out.
Thank you. We'll
Thank you.
definitely take that under advisement, but the highest number of residence passes we've sold at MACA in the past was 1,400. And Talmadge residents, if we strictly only relied on the Talmadge residents to support the pool, we wouldn't be able to cost and operate the pool for that fee. So that's why we gave a month and a half for Talmadge residents to sign up and get that membership. And then we had to open it up to outsiders.
Right. And
So I sort of like your idea of percentage. Is it 80-20? Is it 60-40? I don't know.
Right.
Well, we do have the grant, so we have to follow a 2-to-1 ratio. So
explain that again, I'm sorry.
So for every,
Oh, that's-
because we have received grant funding for that park,
Federal funding.
correct. So
Okay.
there are rules because we do have to allow it to be open to all public, not just residential public. So that has to follow a 2-to-1 ratio. So for every 2 residents, we should be allowing at least 1 non-resident.
But we set the maximum.
We set the maximum amount of passes because of the capacity of the pool.
Right.
The
Okay.
biggest complaint we've had in years past, even last year, the amount of people in the water. It's
So,
just,
yeah, so maybe it's just a
we get
question
yelled
of
at
the.
both ways, so.
Yeah, no, I didn't realize that part about the grant. I guess the only other option I would think of to explore next season would be to look at the due date and the cutoff. Because again, I'm just giving people the benefit of the doubt. They just missed it, and I don't know what the demand is. Like I've been contacted by 5 people so far. I don't know how many like the Parks and Rec have been contacted by that have just been interested in a pass and couldn't get one. I know, for example, another thing was the Talmadge Marlins registration deadline was Monday evening. So for parents interested in joining the Marlins, needed to have a pass, but I believe there's a unique circumstance for that situation where they can get a pass to join the team. So again, I was just trying to brainstorm how we could solve for that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Bolus. I think those are really good points, and I think everyone was caught off guard this year because of the unexpected closing of Maplewood. If that hadn't happened, I think Mrs. Simon said we had about 200 passes left when they announced they were closing, and then those just got taken up really fast in a matter of days, and so that's not something that we were predicting or that anyone was predicting. And next year, people are going to be ready for that, and we'll have a little different situation. But the 2-to-1 ratio definitely affects things, because where we are right now, we have 1,213 resident memberships, just as a perspective, and they capped, it looks like our cap was 2,000. And so you could see that's a significant number of non-resident memberships of what we're selling. Like, it's really something to think about if you're thinking about ratios and how you fairly do that. And we consider taxpayers, we have to remember that there's a lot of ways to pay taxes into the community, not just being a resident. So it's also something to think about.
Yeah, and just to add to that, with the closing of the Maplewood, a lot of them may want to join the Talmadge Marlins team, and then that would bring them to that pool as well.
Right. Yep, definitely food for thought and discussion.
We could still use some lifeguards, too.
Yes. Have we ever considered offering a lifeguard training course? I don't know if anyone here would actually know the answer to that, but.
We've done it at the pool in the past.
Okay.
We do have issues though, because we are an outdoor pool, that we have the time frame to make that happen prior to it opening. We have gone through and reimbursed for training in the past, but we don't kind of have the facilities available. We did have a discussion about maybe seeing if we could partner with some of the local indoor pools to maybe make that happen next year. So we did have that conversation.
Okay.
At least Ms. Simons and I did, about maybe thinking about kind of outside of the box. Maybe we could find a place to be able to do that during the winter.
Okay, yeah, that's a great idea. Okay.
And we did invite all the Maplewood lifeguards to fill out an application.
Hopefully that gets us somewhere.
It did not.
Oh, okay.
No, I just wanted to say that I got my lifeguard training certificate from Maca Park way back in the day when it was the old Maca. So I know that they did the certification in the past.
Yeah, I was a MACA lifeguard at one point too. Okay, anything else for community issues?
So it is the end of May. Did we make a determination on Halloween?
Did we?
Did we make a decision on whether we were going to move Halloween, or are we keeping it the fourth Thursday? Did we ever finalize? Did we finalize that?
The talk that, in talking with the Parks and Rec staff, is that it's the discussion we need to have this year for next year. That because they plan so far ahead with their budget, that it was just making them. It was too much to do all in one time for this year. And
So we're going to keep it on the fourth Thursday.
We're still talking, but it's really something, and for polling the community and having the conversations we need to have, that it'll be looking into 2024 to make changes, and not just necessarily trick or treat, but the activities we have surrounding trick or treat. We always get different feedback on that, and so no, we haven't made any finalized decisions for that, but for this year, we haven't changed anything.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, if there's nothing else, I will close community issues.
Thank you, Mrs. Gutman. Safety, I need to run safety tonight. We have, so I'll call the Safety Committee to order. We have no legislation. Is there anything to come before safety from council or the administration? Seeing no, Mr. Bolus.
Just a question.
Mr. Bolus.
Yes, as it pertains to communications, I was just going to ask for an update on cell tower usage and any new applicants or service providers that have joined. Okay.
that I'm aware
Again,
of.
I'm relaying the questions that I've been asked. Thank you.
Mr. Wood did tell me that things are moving as they feel they should be.
Spielman Electric's the contractor for it, and they're saying by the end of the middle of June, that thing should be operational. At the high school, not the one on North Avenue.
Anything else for safety? Closed committee. Public service, Mrs. Allman.
I call the Public Service Committee to order. We have ordinance 2023-54, ordinance 2023-54 amended Exhibit A, authorizing the mayor to enter into a memorandum of understanding between the County of Summit and City of Talmadge for installation of conduit along the Summit Area Regional Council of Governments fiber route, appropriating the necessary sums and providing for immediate enactment.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Thank you. The amendment tonight is, when we met with the county in this room with quite a few people, they presented us with the cost for the fiber to run from the parameter of the route that I talked about. So from Thomas Road, that's up Industrial, through the Industrial Park to West Avenue, Nottingham, Overdale, and Kent Drive to Howell Road to the Joint Dispatch Center, to run a parallel conduit with 26 pull boxes strategically along that route. They gave us the price of $94,000. Then they call us back after I've already submitted the legislation. I said, that's great. I think it's a great deal. We should do this. They said that did not include the material. That was only, they were looking at one side of it. That was the labor to bore. So the county had on another document the price for the material, which was $47,000. The bottom line is for that length of distance, it's $10 a foot to install a 2-inch conduit with pull boxes installed underground. We could never touch it for $10 a foot. So that's what the amendment is. I feel, and so does IT, to be able to interconnect, it'd pick up close to Lions Park, so if we ever wanted to run Wi-Fi over to that location, it would be our conduit in the ground. Connecting Fire Station 1, 210 Osceola, it's just a good deal. So that's what the amendment's about.
Mrs. Ullman?
This is only its second reading.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted a clarification, so,
It's its second reading. It's at
The-
this is its second reading, just so
Yeah.
you know.
yeah. So just a clarification that the amount for, and I'm reading off of the ordinance supplement that's been amended, was it $92,320?
That was the original cost for the labor
For
only.
the labor only, and then we're adding another
47.
so $139,457.44 in
That's-
order to do
this
this
is only
project.
second
You said at $10 a foot?
Yes.
Okay. I don't have a problem with that.
So
Just a question. So this is at second reading.
Second reading.
Right. You're just
It says-
amending it,
Yeah,
is my request.
right.
The request to amend and then take it to third reading.
No, it would stay at second
Would
reading.
stay at second reading, amended. Okay, got it.
But we would like to adopt it after we amend it, correct?
It's up to council.
Okay.
If you adopt it, there's only 5 members of council. We need 6 to make it an immediate enactment. But it gives me the opportunity to tell the contractor they adopted it, but it is not going to effect for 30 days. Or we wait until the next council meeting, which it will be at third reading, but I think we'll still only have 5 members of council, which it's still at third reading. It only takes 4 council members to adopt. So it's either adopting, you want to deal with? Yeah. I'm okay, if you want to make the amendment, if council chooses to amend it, give it a second reading, then on the 8th,
Yeah.
At third reading, I need 4 votes. And
Mrs.
I-
Ullman?
Yes.
I'm sorry, is there more discussion first? Okay. No, I was just going to make a motion to amend ordinance 2023-54.
Second.
Any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Dennis Lowry.
Yes.
Becky Allman.
Yes.
Jonathan Bolas.
Yes.
Mary Gutman.
Yes.
Carol Kilway.
Yes.
The amendment has passed 5-0,
and just give it a second.
and we'll give it a second
Thank you.
reading. Anything else for public service?
Mrs. Ullman?
Yes.
I did have just a real quick mention. I wanted to thank Mike Wygand. I was working with him because there's going to be some curb replacement in the Village Green neighborhood. And I had residents asking me, you know, when is it going to start? When is it going to start? So quick phone call, found out when it's going to start. He drafted up a letter that I'm passing around to all the neighbors so they know exactly what to expect because it's going to be quite cumbersome and, but it was definitely needed. These curbs are almost 60 years old and they're disintegrating on us. So I just want to thank him very much for all the work he did putting these letters together. Him and Tina put them together and just trying to make it a night, you know, a lot of communication, which is what we need to the residents, and trying to make it as smooth as possible. So just want to a little shout out to Mr. Wygand. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anything else for public service?
Mrs. Allman, just for clarification on, for those that are live streaming, so they understand some of the discussion that just happened on if we adopted it tonight as opposed to waiting to our next meeting to adopt. So if we would have adopted tonight, it would not have went into effect for 30 days. If we wait and adopt at the next meeting, it goes in effect immediately. And so the mayor picks up 15 days about for waiting. So just for those that are watching that don't really understand some of the technical part of what we do. That's all.
Well, thank you for
Did I
that.
explain that right, Mrs. Raber? Thank you.
Thank you for that explanation. Seeing nothing else for public service, I close committee.
Thank you. Reports of special committees. The only thing I have, and it goes back to the RTA. Frustrated is probably not a strong enough word. If you guys remember on April 13th, I reported that I had 3 or 4 different calls into different departments to get an update on what was going on with RTA. Never got a call back. Didn't get a call back until I finally talked or left a message for their CEO. And then everyone down there wants to be your best friend. So they started calling on Friday and Monday. But all of us, not council and the administration, have been getting somewhat attacked either through social media or direct email or phone calls, basically insinuating that we don't know what's going on. And well, to some degree, they're correct because RTA didn't communicate with us. You should never, ever have to wait 6 weeks to get a call back, right? I mean, none of us run our businesses that way, you know. So, and then when you add to that, somebody that really gets torqued off at us or at the administration, and they leave a voicemail that nobody should have to listen to, it's just, it's bad. And so the conversation I had with RTA on Friday or Monday of this week, it's all a blur. They said, Mr. Lowry, we would love to come and talk to you, after they explained to me all the reasons why they did not have to come talk to us a year ago. And I said, great, we would love to have you come Thursday night. And this is a conference call with 2 or 3 people, and they're the ones that said, Mr. Lowry, we would love to come talk to you. And I said, great. And as soon as I said, we would love for you to come Thursday night at 7, they said, well, we're not sure we're available then. And so I just want everyone to know, and everyone that's watching, exactly what we're dealing with here. I'm very disappointed in that agency. You should not have to go to the top to have someone below the top do their job from a customer service point of view. That's all. All we wanted was a phone call, a return phone call, so that we can communicate with our constituents what's going on. And if we don't know, we can't communicate that. And if the mayor doesn't know, he can't communicate it to us. And so anyway, that's not good. That's not the way government should operate, because what the public does, they lump us all together. And so you have the RTA not doing their job right, and then we have the public thinking that we don't do our job right. Well, our employees do their very best to try to provide good service to our residents. We work hard as council people, the administration works hard, and I don't like it. Well, none of us like it when you're being penalized or you're being chastised for something that you had no input and no control on. That's bad. And for them not to send one person here tonight when they know the mayor had a meeting with them. You know, I finally had 2 or 3 phone calls. And for them not to free up one employee out of that whole agency to come here and explain to us the process so our residents that are live streaming tonight could watch and understand the process, shame on them. That's all I got. Any announcements? Item 12. Okay, see everybody Memorial Day. With that, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Burton.
Becky Allman,
Yes.
Jonathan Bolles.
Yes.
Mary Gutman,
Yes.
Carol Kilway,
Yes.
Dennis Lowry.
Yes. It's 8:32. We are adjourned. Great meeting tonight. Thanks for working so hard.